Many businesses never get exponential because simply their costs won't allow them to. I remember when I first learned this and I shut down my agency. So I had an agency, we're doing about $5 million a year. The next is understanding the path of least resistance. This thinking model blew me away. So everyone in life is a creative energy, and we're all energy, and we move along the path of least resistance. As you shift your mindset into being a business scientist, you get to just come up with these low risk, high return games. And like what I mean by that is like it's super low risk, like it costs you $1,000 or $5,000 or $2,000 or $100. But if you get it right, it can turn to this massive improvement in your business. On this episode, I'll continue with the exponential entrepreneur thinking or mental models. We've had such a good time sharing these with you, so now I'm going to share 3 more. The first one is buy for a dime, sell for a dollar. Be able to at least 10x, if not 100x, what you sell something for is the basic principle. And so whenever you're thinking about what you're selling, I see a lot of people, and they just have no margin, okay, is to be able to have a product that you're able to basically create for really small amounts and sell it for a lot. If you think about something like Facebook, they have billions of people that are using it, except their cost of bringing on another person isn't that big. This is such an important thing. Many businesses never get exponential because simply their costs won't allow them to. I remember when I first learned this and I shut down my agency. So I had an agency, we're doing about $5 million a year. And I just realized I couldn't grow past $5 million a year, which was pretty good. But I realized that it was so expensive every time I brought on a new customer. I needed so much. I was not having, buy for a dime, sell for a dollar as a metaphor, but buy for 10 cents, buy for 5 cents, sell for a dollar, buy for 1 cent, sell for a dollar. And so I asked myself, okay, if I want to create an exponential business and I want to grow much further than 5 million, how am I going to do it? And I realized that the only way I was going to be able to do it was education in that model. It's like, I can do it for people. However, if I do it for someone, how do I get this 10, 20x return on what I'm buying my product for? Many people come to me and they do not have enough margin in what they're offering. And so I once actually had a person come to me. She goes, I want to start this. She was an amazing lady, love her. And she goes, I want to start this business. I go, what is it? She goes, okay, it's for young mums and they're so busy and I'm going to send them care packages. I was like, all right, that's cool. What are you going to put in these care packages? She's like, bubble baths and soaps and this and that. I was like, awesome. Okay, that sounds great. What are you going to charge? She's like, $100. And I was like, what? She's like, $100. I'm like, and what's in it? How much does it cost you? She's like, oh, about $45 with a big smile on her face. She said, it cost me $45 to get it all. I was like, that's a really bad idea. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's really bad. She's like, no, I'm going to make $55. I'm like, that's not going to work. And like, just the effort of putting it all together and sending it to someone for $55 is just not worth it. And then how do you scale it? Like, how do you then pay for staff? Where does the staff cost go on that? I was like, minimum, if it's 45, like minimum, you need to be selling that for $300. She goes, but new mums won't pay that. I'm like, good, there you go. You figured out what I figured out. It's not got enough margin in it. I was like, how do you create enough margin so it's actually worthwhile? And that is why I recommend to my coaches that they do group coaching, because instead of having one person on the session and you do 1 hour, you can have 1,000 people. And if all 1,000 people pay you $20, well, that's $20,000 for that hour. Right? Does that make sense? And so there's much more margin. It's scalable. A lot of people's business model just won't actually allow them to make the money in the time that they can never get past, just trading time for money. So that the thinking model is this, is that you must buy for a dime, sell for a dollar. Buy something really small, produce it really, really easily, and then sell it a lot of times. I mean, this is how the music industry and the movie industry ended up making so much money. They have a huge outlay to produce a movie. But then once they produce it, right, they just send it. Now it's obviously on Netflix and they just, someone gets a login. But when I grew up, it was, you'd get a VHS, right? And so they would just give it and and they'd be able to produce it. All they needed was the plastic, and then CDs came along and DVDs. It was just the plastic. So once it was produced, they could then sell it for years and years to come. And so this is something you want to consider, is how do you increase the amount of money you make compared to how much it costs you to actually produce it. The next is understanding the path of least resistance. This thinking model blew me away. So everyone in life is a creative energy, and we're all energy, and we move along the path of least resistance. Okay. So what that means, everything flows like this. Water will flow downhill. If you put a boulder in the way, the water will bank up against the boulder or go around it, because it's a path of least resistance. It's not going to try to go over it. Now we see electricity going through power lines. And we think, okay, does electricity just like going through those power lines? No, it doesn't. It's just the path of least resistance down that, that copper wire. If there was no rubber casing around it and you put your hand on that copper wire, you'd find out that electricity likes going through you even more, right? You become the path of least resistance. So what you got to understand is that behavior in your organization, behavior in your clients, behavior in the people around you, they're always going along the path of least resistance towards pleasure and away from pain. So this thinking model has changed how I lead. It's changed how I market, and it's changed how I sell. And so remember, when you're selling, a person's path of least resistance is to say no. Because if they say no, they don't lose anything, right? So no is the easy option, right? So when you're talking to someone, you got to make the easy option that they say yes. Now, the path of least resistance when someone is consuming your content, by the way, if you're like me, you actually want people to consume your content, is how easy is it for them to log in? How easy is it for them to get into momentum? How easy is it for them to win? How easy is it for them to be able to ask for help? So you need to have the path of least resistance. Now, when you're working with staff, right, the path of least resistance most of the time is to do just enough. So how do you create the path of least resistance that people go over the top, right? That the least resistance place is that they play full out. So we do cash prizes, cash bonuses, team member of the month, we do shout outs, and also if someone's not doing right, we put boulders in the way of what's wrong. And so when you think about this, is that people inherently just want to go towards pleasure and away from pain. The person's not necessarily bad. You've got to just set up structures so that what you want to happen happens. And so when I started thinking about every area of my business, there is a path to what I want, and I just need to make that path the least resistant path so they take the action that I want. I started to change how our team communicated, how we did meetings, how we did everything so that they flowed along the path of least resistance. And so the last thinking model that I want to give you today, and I know that we've covered a lot of these, is to be a business scientist. Okay, so I used to think of business in a completely different way. I used to think about it as this. I guess I just didn't really know what. I don't actually know how I thought about business as this. But now, when I got this thinking model, I realized I need to be a scientist. And a scientist creates a test or a hypothesis, tests their hypothesis, and then gets an answer. Okay, and so I started thinking about my business like a scientist. And so instead of thinking, I used to think about it binary, like you're just going to get it right or wrong. That's it. And now I'm a scientist. Like I'm just doing all these mini tests and tests and tests and tests. And the more I test, the more feedback I get. And some are right, some are wrong. So what? And I just in this scientist idea of cooking up a brand new idea, testing it to the market, and then seeing what comes back. And so being a business scientist allowed me to kind of take all the pressure off. And so I want you to think about that in your business is to make small tests, right? $100 tests, $100 bets. How do you go and hire the right person and just put a bet in? I'll give you a trial for a month. I'm going to test whether or not you're going to actually increase my profitability or my revenue, and to have test and test and test and test. And so my business is this big fun game, right? And I'm trying to create the biggest business I can and have a ton of fun doing it. And as I'm going out there and doing it, I'm creating all these tests every day. Hey, what about this? What if we change this word? What if we try that? Have we thought about doing this course? Or what about that? Oh, that was a bad idea. Did this work? And so as you shift your mindset into being a business scientist, you get to just come up with these low risk, high return games. And like what I mean by that is like it's super low risk, like it costs you $1,000 or $5,000 or $2,000 or $100. But if you get it right, it can turn to this massive improvement in your business. And if you get it wrong, that's okay. You just lose the $100 or $1,000, right? And so you just do these tests. And if you do enough tests and come up with enough ideas, you'll start to come up with winners. For example, my Rapid Recode program was just a test I put on YouTube. After not being able to get it work anywhere else, I put it on YouTube at 1. 5-day challenge was a test. Adding a VIP was a test. Chris Duncan in a circle was a test. Everything's just been a test. And there's been so many things that didn't work. And just the ones that you see out there in my business are just the ones that won. And they're exponentially amazing. And it's fascinating because I never know when the next one will hit, right? But I'm just constantly testing. So anyway, those are 3. On the next episode, I'll cover the next 3 exponential thinking models. And I hope you're enjoying this. Stay focused. Become a self-made millionaire. Bye for now.